Thank you very much for being here today. This is something that we've done now for the last 12 years. In June, we released our what we call the popular annual financial report, which is a layman's version of the comprehensive report that was released earlier this year. So I won't spend too much time going over the financial details because we did cover that pretty thoroughly when we released the annual report. But again, this is our attempt. This is our attempt to be more open, more accountable, more transparent to our citizenry, to people interested in public finance, really to understand what's going on, a snapshot of our finances at a given moment in time, this being the end of last year, to see where we were. As you know, last year, a very challenging year in so many ways and also financially for the city. But despite that, we finished the year with about $85 million in our fund balance. I think that's a pretty enviable position when you look at cities across the country, and given what everyone else has been dealing with, the fact that the city in the years prior to 2020 had been able to generate surplus dollars, realize those savings while continuing to fund their pension, continuing and restarting a capital budget. On those two fronts, last year we did very well in pension. We've got more money in the pension fund right now. Even when you don't count the future valuation of the parking asset, just the portfolio itself is more money than we've ever had in the city's pension fund. So that's very strong. Still a long way to go, but certainly a far cry from where we started when I started here. And then in the capital budget, we worked on 3 bridges last year. I don't know when the last time was that we were on 3 different bridge projects. And so a lot of that's highlighted in the report that's being released today, again, in a much more reader-friendly way to understand where we are. So I want to thank Rachel Heisler and Mark Petak and Andrew DeWitt here on staff who worked very hard on this, and then the folks at Binkley Canavy who help us really pull this data together and present it in a reader-friendly way. This is a report that we get a lot of feedback on every year. We mail this out to all the libraries, to a lot of business leaders, to a lot of community organizations, and every year we get questions about it and looking for it or wanting to talk about some of the issues that it raises. So it's been a good way for us to engage with our community on public finance. Let me talk now a little bit about where we are in 2021. We are continuing to see troubling revenue returns in particularly those two categories that we talked so much about last year, parking and amusement tax. At this point in the year, lower than we were last year, because you figure last year we did get a lot of the first quarter in. We didn't get any of that, haven't had any of that this year. So it's slowly coming back, but certainly we're going to feel the pinch of that, of those two categories this year. On the expenditure side, we are pretty much where we would expect to be, and I'm basing this on the end of May numbers. So we don't have the end of June numbers yet, but based on the end of May numbers, most departments pretty much within where you'd expect them to be budget-wise. Nobody we would point out right now to say, oh, we really need to watch what they're doing. There are a couple that we will keep an eye on, but nothing significant. Probably the biggest thing that's happened this year, of course, was the passage of the American Rescue Plan. We to date have received, the city has received $167 million. That money has been deposited in a segregated account as we requested from the administration. That account, nothing has been drawn down from that account to date. I know the mayor just this past week released plans to what he wanted to see happen with those funds. That'll be up for discussion with city council, and I'm sure we'll be talking to council about that. But for our point, from our perspective, we are in a position to audit those dollars, to watch the spending of those dollars in real time. We're going to share that on an open government platform with the public, so that you'll be able to see the drawdown of those funds, where they go, what they're used for, whatever council and the mayor decide on that. There are some guidelines about when that money has to be spent. There are some guidelines, not many, as to how it should be spent. And so we will be, we'll keep an eye on that. That, of course, will also be audited as part of the single audit, which we do every year, which comes out. That'll come out next September of 22. You'll be able to, not this coming September, but the September after that, will be all part of the single audit that we, to show where those funds went. And there are pretty strict reporting requirements that we'll keep an eye on, make sure that we're meeting those deadlines and those mandates with respect to the federal government and the spending of those dollars. And so that's where we are. The other thing is, I think in the city right now, you're seeing the continuing effects of COVID. People are starting to return to work. I'm glad to be here in the office today. I'm glad to have a suit on, though I have to admit I had to squeeze into it a little bit. But I'm glad that we are getting back to some sense of normality. But we are still struggling in a lot of ways. And I think you can see it in some of the statistics that have come out recently, particularly with respect to labor force. And I find that particularly troubling because we're not exactly sure what it means yet. We know that there are a lot of people who are out of the labor force, whether it's because they have decided to, through COVID, have decided to retire. I've talked to a number of teachers who just didn't feel they could be helpful in a teaching environment where they were teaching online, and so they retired. I've talked to lawyers who, the idea of being at home just wasn't something, and they've kind of pulled back. So a lot of that I knew, and a lot of you in your industry, in journalism, we've seen people decide to take early retirement or accept buyouts from some of your organizations. So you're seeing that. You add to that the people who are home because they're caring for an elderly parent or children, and they're out of the workforce right now. The fact that Pittsburgh, as big a city as we are, is still very much a college town, and the fact that a lot of college classes were online, we probably didn't have the students living here that we normally would, and I think it'll be September before we know what that looks like when they return, because they are a key part of our workforce as well. They take up a lot of jobs around the city and a very important part of particularly in our service industry. And so all of that, hopefully we get a better hint of that in September when kids are back in school and when college students are back. We'll get a better sense of what the workforce really is. The biggest concern to me about that is whether it means something more than just a workforce reduction, and does it really mean a population reduction, and have people left the region. And I think the census isn't going to tell us that because this all happened after the census, but we really want to keep an eye on that to see where we are. As I've said in this room many times, the biggest key to the city's financial success is population. The people who live here pay the biggest burden of our taxation, and if we're losing population, or at least if this reduction in workforce is because of a drop in population, that's a big problem for the city of Pittsburgh. And so we definitely want to keep an eye on that. But with all of that, I'm sure you have questions about this or about anything that's going on this year. So I'm going to open it up for questions now. Again, I'd encourage you to go online and read this report. It's very well done. It tells a good story about Pittsburgh, or at least an accurate story of where we are financially right now. So I'll leave it at that, and we're going to take our first question. Okay, so we don't have any questions. So any questions? Well, while if there isn't a question, there's one other thing I do want to talk about, and we'll get some questions in the meantime. Wilkinsburg. There's been a lot of talk about Wilkinsburg and the potential annexation of Wilkinsburg with the city of Pittsburgh. This is obviously new territory for us, seeing that it hasn't happened in this city since Carrick joined the city in 1927. So it's been a long time since we've had this kind of conversation. But it's a conversation that we in this region need to have all the time. I've talked to many of you about this problem that we have with our fractional system of government, how costly it is, how ineffective it is. The problems that we deal with, whether it's raining out right now. Stormwater doesn't know municipal boundaries. Opioid deaths know no municipal boundaries. Crime knows no municipal boundaries. So it's incumbent on us to always be talking with our neighboring municipalities about mutual aid, about consolidated services, about any way that we can help each other, whether it's joint contracting, joint efforts, and all those things, including the potential for full annexation. In some municipalities, maybe it's disincorporation. And this isn't just the city, this is all of our communities. All of our communities, our suburban communities, need to be talking to their neighbors about how they can better serve their constituencies. And City of Pittsburgh and Wilkinsburg are having that conversation right now. It's going to be up to our council and up to the people of Wilkinsburg to decide whether it's a good fit. I will tell you that I am encouraging our council to vote yes for this merger. I think it's important for a number of reasons, including basic cost of government and effectiveness arguments that I just talked about. But also, I just mentioned the problem that we have with population. There's a key number, and that number is 300,000. 300,000 is the number that separates anyone you talk to, from GFOA to others, will tell you that a big municipality, the difference between a big municipality and a small municipality, that line is 300,000 population. We drop below 300,000, which we're likely to do in this census. We become a small municipality in a lot of eyes, and that's not a good thing for Pittsburgh. And so adding population from our neighboring communities, in this case Wilkinsburg, is a very positive thing. Having that, having those bodies in the city of Pittsburgh is important from a population perspective and from a broader view to having those people here. Now I can tell you, we're already providing fire service and garbage collection in Wilkinsburg. We've studied the effects of that. It's been a win-win. It's been a very good thing for Wilkinsburg. It's a value-added service to the people in Wilkinsburg, but it's also been a positive for the city. At the time, as I think some of you know, that Wilkinsburg went out and had to borrow some money to supplement our pension fund. And I've already talked about how well the pension fund is doing. But we've seen, when we studied it, that it was at worst neutral and maybe even a net positive on the financial side to Pittsburgh. So I'm encouraging council to vote yes. I hope that they allow Wilkinsburg to determine their fate in this. I'm not going to speak on behalf of the people of Wilkinsburg, but certainly I think for the city's perspective, it's a very positive thing. And I hope they will give it ample consideration. So with that, I think we do have a question from Ashley Murray. Ashley, go ahead.
Yeah, we talked the other day about the plan that the administration and the task force put forth for the American Rescue Plan funds. And I see Chris Warner is going to ask you a similar question. Do that. I just have a detailed question. Why is the controller's office and the mayor's office reporting for the amount of cash that's in hand right now? So the mayor's office is saying 117.5 million, and your office reports 167 million.
I would have to check with them as to what they're looking at. We brought the account up the day you asked me. Actually, we looked at the account to see how much money was in there, and there's 167 million and some change in there. Yeah, so 167,500,000 and some in that account. Now there were separate outlays, so maybe the last check they received was the 117, but we'll check on that and see. But in the account, as of right now, $167 million, and to our knowledge, there hasn't been any money added to that account. So that is the what's been received from the federal government. But we'll do it. We'll check with the mayor's office to see what they're looking at and let you know.
This one is from Chris Potter. Having some computer, I would like to know if the controller has any concerns about the proposed uses for rescue plan money. Do any of the allocations seem problematic in terms of being legitimate use of money? Is he comfortable with the amount of money shoring up city operations and the parking authority?
So the question is, if you didn't hear, is from Chris Potter. Chris, but the question is with respect to the mayor's proposed spending of the American Rescue Plan money and my thoughts on it, and love more detail than that, but I'll answer the question. So first off, let me say this, and I think I've said this to some of you earlier. I think it's premature for the mayor to suggest a 4-year spending plan of money when we're going to have a new mayor in 6 months. And certainly, now, the fact of the matter is this is all completely amendable, and the new mayor, I'm sure, will have much to say about that spending. And so I'm not saying it's that big a deal, but I do think it's kind of premature to suggest 4 years of spending when we're going to have a new mayor in 6 months. But council is going to deliberate over this, and I'll certainly talk to some of them about my thoughts. I think the numbers, when I look at the numbers as far as immediate kind of expenses, they might be a little bit on the high side, but I don't think they're that out of line. Remember that the workforce, or at least a big chunk of the workforce, took a pay freeze with the understanding that those funds would be replaced if federal money became available. So the budget will be reopened, and those monies need to be replaced. We had a hiring freeze last year, so there are a lot of vacancies that need to be filled, and there's also there's a loss of revenue that we need to replace to ensure that we continue our payroll. I mean, our payroll right now, compared to what it was pre-Act 47, is a much leaner payroll, and so we want to make sure that we're not going through additional layoffs, because that could really affect city services in every way, whether it's public safety, public works, or any of the other departments. So I know I'll obviously hear more discussion about that number at council. Like I said, we might suggest that 100 is a little bit on the high side there, but I don't think it's totally out of line. And again, I'll be interested to hear more about that as council deliberates. The one big problematic thing that I saw on the spreadsheet was a contribution to the One Pittsburgh initiative. I talked a little bit about this when we released the annual report, how problematic it is to me that our large nonprofits continue to pay nothing to the city, and as a payment in lieu of tax. So the fact that now they've created an entity for the nonprofits supposedly to provide services to the city, and yet the city is putting some of this money into that is a problem for me. So I will be talking to council about that and why I think it's not appropriate. So that's the one thing that jumped out at me as problematic. I said this before, the agreement we've reached, as I understand it, with the nonprofits is that they will continue to do the things they've always done. And one of those things is that they will not be contributing to the city of Pittsburgh. And so I'm not exactly sure what that agreement actually accomplishes, other than to lay out, and maybe in a little more detail, the things that they will continue to do. I think I've answered. If I haven't answered your question, Chris, send us another text and we'll answer some more. So, other questions?
Doesn't appear that we have any other questions.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Again, I'm going to tell you, other than this Wilkinsburg issue, which is very immediate, the thing that we're really going to be watching over the next few months and the rest of this year is this issue over our local labor force, because I'm really concerned about it. I'm concerned that it means more. It's not just that people are home because they're getting more money in unemployment, because unemployment's actually gone down. So the problem I see is we just have a lot fewer people in the working population. And whether that's because people taking early retirement, that's one thing. But I think it's more serious than that. It could be more serious than that. It could be that we have a bigger population loss than we're anticipating. So we'll keep an eye on that, and we'll report as we learn more. So thank you very much. Thanks for your time today. Obviously, if you have any questions, you all know how to get a hold of me or Rachel, and we'll answer any questions that you have. Thanks very much. Thanks for the time today.